Good morning, and welcome to the Women's Forum, presented by Accenture. Growth strategies to accelerate your career. Please welcome High-Tech President, Omar Duque.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. I want to welcome all of you to the Women's Networking Breakfast, which I hope you had an opportunity to enjoy just now, and this forum, which is presented by Accenture here at the High-Tech Fall Leadership Summit. The title for today's session is Growth Strategies to Accelerate Your Career. And I just want to say that I am so happy that all of you have joined us here this morning. Today's session, I want to acknowledge, is open to both men and women. But I want to say that, throughout the year, we are always very intentional about creating spaces where women and their allies can come and have important conversations about our collective success. I want to recognize Accenture for their leadership, for challenging us at High-Tech to always be more intentional in creating spaces like this, spaces where we can come together and have important and sometimes difficult conversations, but always with a lens of doing better, of helping each other, of overcoming and breaking down barriers, and of lifting each other up. We take this spirit into absolutely everything that we do at High-Tech. And I want to call out one quick fact, and that is, I want to acknowledge that 49% of the attendees at this summit throughout the course of today and tomorrow, 49% are women. And I say that because it's part of that intentionality. When you create a space, when you're intentional in who you're inviting, in who you're welcoming, that is what happens. And that's not, I say that also because I want to acknowledge the fact that that's not always the case, especially in the technology space. I was at a major global IT conference not too long ago. And I took a moment to reflect as I looked across the room at the lack of women, the almost the insulting lack of women in those spaces. And I think that as an industry, we have a lot of work to do, but I think that organizations like High-Tech and the work that we do here could be, should be, is an example to other groups, other organizations in our industry as a whole of what is possible. And that's why I genuinely believe that we are leading in this space, yet we still have far to go. And it's opportunities like this, it's spaces like this that allow us to really push each other to do better. So with that, I would like to turn the mic over. And I would ask you to join me in welcoming from Accenture, Yesenia Reyes, Managing Director for Talent and Organization, Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity, to kick our program off.
Thank
Yesenia.
you, Omar. Hello. Buenos dias, good morning. To our virtual audience, I hope you're out there smiling wide at the ability to be gathered together in community, which is where we always thrive. I am delighted to be with you this morning thinking about how do we accelerate our careers. And so the focus of our time this morning is going to be about that. Hearing from one of our luminaries, a special person in our organization and to you at High-Tech. We'll hear from Nellie this morning. We will also engage in a fireside chat with two of my friends and colleagues about how does accelerating one's career really work when we're in the midst of doing it, right? It's the hard work of paying attention to teams and growth and business growth. And then we will also have an ability to have a facilitated session. And so today is about thinking about ourselves as a whole person, thinking about our careers kind of in a roundabout way, right, in the 360 view of things. And we're really excited to be able to do this with you this morning. I have the incredible privilege of introducing to you Nelly Borrero. I think everyone here would say they know her, but I'm still going to talk about her as if we're meeting her for the first time. She's a global inclusion and diversity senior strategy advisor at Accenture. Over the course of an incredible career, Nellie has led Accenture's I&D efforts, kind of dating way back into, not way back, Nellie, dating back to the start of her career, where she was the one that formed the first I&D role at Accenture. So talk about groundbreaking, and has been doing that ever since. She has worked globally to advance the careers and experiences of our communities in Japan, in India, in South Africa, in Brazil, in the UK, and the US. She has impacted the lives and career wellness of our LGBTQ plus community, our persons with disability community. Nellie has achieved incredible recognitions, not only with high tech, but also with Latina Style, ranked as the highest ranking Latina, the Association of Latino Professionals, America's 50 Most Powerful Latinas, and Alpha's inaugural Hall of Fame and Most Powerful Latina. And then tonight we have the honor, the privilege, with another group of her colleagues to celebrate her induction into the High Tech Hall of Fame. And so please help me welcome Nellie Borrero.
And I've known her since she was a baby at Accenture, and now she's this incredible leader. So thank you for all that you do. So good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Let's get some energy in the room. We're about to get this party started. I'm really excited about the conversation we're going to have today, because it really is going to be about how do organizations and leaders look at the holistic picture of their employees. And they'll get into that and what's really important for us to focus on for everyone. But for my time here with you, I want to really hone it into our community, our Latinaness, our Latino, Latinx, Hispanic American, call it what you want. Let's not argue about that. Let's just show up, right? Because it's the diversity within ourselves, how we feel comfortable referring to ourselves in our community. So I want to start with some fundamentals in the core of who we are as a community. So let's think about this and let's really embrace this. Our culture infuses our power. If we think about all the incredible things that we've learned through our journey, through our culture, it really infuses the power of us. So we have to continue to think about that as we're showing up every day. Our history and our ancestry, and just yesterday was the Dia de los Muertos, a lot of people did a lot of reflection on their ancestors. If you think about our history and our ancestry, it has taught us resilience. And if you've been to other sessions where I've spoken, I have defined resilience, right? I mean, it's really important that we understand the essence of this word. Then if we think about the experiences that we have had, we know that that exhibits our resolve and our strength of character. So you take power, resilience, strength of character, that all combines to the fact that we are a force. We're a force that is in this environment every single day. The question becomes, do we show up as we're a force? A lot of times, we don't. Some of us do, some of us don't. And that's okay, because we're going to talk about that. So as we think about we're a force, let's take this whole sort of foundation and core of our culture and let's bring it to our corporate journey. In our corporate journey, we know there's several things we must do. We must be seen, we must be heard, and we must insist on feeling valued. Those things are really important to us. And in order to do that, we have to ask ourselves, how are we being seen? How are we positioning ourselves? How are we being heard? Are we speaking up and share our thoughts, ideas, and everything that we want to include? And then are we being valued? So we have to ask ourselves all those different things. I ask myself that all of the time. Was I seen? Was I heard? Was I valued? And we have to keep this front and center, because a lot of times it doesn't come naturally to us. It doesn't come natural to us because our lived experiences have been very different, right? We tend to sometimes just, minimize ourselves a little bit. We sometimes tend to stay in the corner a little bit, right? Sometimes it's even our accent, like this New Yorican accent that I have. It took me a while. It took me a while to say, okay, this is who I am, it's what I sound like, but sometimes it really shuts us down. So as we think about this seen, heard, and valued, I was having a conversation with Sol Trujillo. And for those of you that do not know Sol Trujillo, look him up, get to know him. But he is now the co-founder of Latitude along with Garia Costa. He was the former CEO of Telstra, of US West, and he's had an incredible career. He is probably one of the highest ranking Latinos we have out there, really focusing on our community and insisting that corporate America really pays attention to us and the value that we bring. So we typically have conversations where we challenge each other, and we always have fun doing that. But this particular conversation was more formal. I was actually interviewing him for an article, and in the middle of the conversation, I said, Sol, I said, besides being seen and valued and heard and all these different things, what else? What else does our community need to do to continue to evolve? And if you know Sol, he gets, he leans into the camera and you feel all of his energy through the camera. He goes, Nelly, it's simple. We have to compete. And when he said that word, I don't know what's happening with me lately, but when I hear words that cause emotion, I start thinking about those emojis, and I'm like, oh my God. So I pictured in my head immediately this emoji, the brain blowing up, right? And I'm like, yes, we have to compete. We have to talk about how we compete. So then, because I love defining words, I went ahead and looked it up. So the definition of compete, because we have to change our relationship with this word. So let me read the definition. It means to strive to gain or win something by defeating. That word alone gets us a little bit uncomfortable, right? By defeating or establishing superiority over others who are trying to do the same. That's quite heavy, particularly when we've been taught not to do that. Right? I mean, in a sports, yeah, we do that. We want to compete. We want to reach that goal. We want to get that basket. We want to do all those different things, right? But in the corporate journey, do we really show up like we want to compete, right? We have been brought up from a perspective of we have to be polite. We have to share. We can't go out and agitate too much. We can't disrupt too much. All these different things. So when Sol said we have to talk about competing and show up to compete, I'm thinking from that moment on to where we are today is that we have to start talking about this because we need to have, like I said, a different relationship with that word. So I started thinking about compete. I started thinking about, do I show up that way? And I think I have in many parts of my journey, in many stations of my journey. But I've always shown up that way from the perspective of asking myself, what are my intentions? I'm not looking to compete to annihilate anyone. But I'm looking to compete to do one thing, and that's to take up the space that I have earned. And what I want us to start thinking about is how are you showing up, taking up the space that you have earned? Are you thinking big enough, or are you minimizing your own aspirations because there is some part of you that's still not ready to go out there and compete, be seen, and be heard? So as you're going to go through this session today, what I want you to start thinking about over and over again is the organizations know that they have to attract talent, they have to retain talent, they have to advance the talent, and they have to make sure that you don't go, right? There's a big investment in all of you. So they understand their mandate, they understand their marching orders. The question becomes, do we understand ours? And the way we understand ours is if we pause and we ask ourselves, am I where I want to be? Am I too comfortable right now? Because if you're too comfortable, chances are you are not pushing yourself to where you should be, right? Am I agitating and disrupting in a way that is going to solve for me? The other thing that I reminded myself of when I was thinking about my journey, and yes, and it's been a lot of years, it's okay, I own it. With that journey, what I always had behind my mind is almost justifying why I wanted to compete, almost justifying why I was getting on those planes and going all over the world. Because for me, what made me feel good about it was the fact that I wanted to evolve, to work on my wealth model so that I can help support my family. Right? We all have that drive of what gets us there. So whenever I was pushing for that promotion or pushing for this opportunity or raising my hand to go somewhere, and at the same time battling the expectations that were there of me, of my own family, not to travel and leave my daughter behind. And oh my God, my mother would have heart attacks. She would say, like, "Ay, si tú te vas, who's gonna feed your husband?" I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know, a can of tuna fish would work. I don't know, right? And who's going to take care of your daughter? Well, her father's going to take care. I mean, there's all these different things that we have to go through, right? And there are specifics to our gender. I get that. But my whole point is that as I think about that now and thinking that I justified it from the perspective of it's okay because I'm going to help solve for my family from a wealth model perspective. And I don't know how you feel with that level of responsibility, but I know I felt it very heavily. It almost makes me sad that I had to think about how do I justify doing this just so that I can help others, instead of saying, I want to do this because I've earned this, because I belong here, because I need to take up this space. So when I say pause, I mean pause from the perspective of what's driving you. Are you feeling really good about what's driving you? And are you really pursuing that drive in a way that you're showing up to Soul's Word, competing? So as we go to the process, I'm looking at the time before I get told to get off the stage. So as we think about this, I said the organizations and leaders, some of you here are leaders doing this yourselves for other people, right? We know what we have to do. Really focus on what you want to do. Push yourself. It's okay to agitate. It's okay to disrupt as long as you know your intentions. I don't say do it with negative intentions, but it's okay to have a different relationship with compete. It's what we had to do also with women many years ago when we would be referred to as aggressive. We're like, no, it's not aggressive. We're assertive. We're very assertive and we're okay with being that, right? It's okay to say I'm assertive and I'm going to compete. And I am going to claim my space, my earned space. So I leave you with that. Enjoy the session. I'll be part of it. Yesenia, to the team, to Glenda and Carolina. By the way, these are three. Can I just say this before you come up, please? These are three amazing women that within their own journeys, I mean, they've had an incredible storyline of where they are and where they've been. So I'm happy you're going to share your perspective here. And I think Omar might have left, but oh, no, he's there. Thank you, Omar, for your leadership. Thank you to Rosa, who's sitting here, our new chair of high tech starting in January. I mean, we have board members in here. Stand up and be seen, the board members of high tech. I mean, seriously, I mean, this is an incredible organization. There's another one of our board members. See, he stood up. See what I mean? He stood up. See? So there you go. Be seen, be heard. But anyway, I mean, High Tech is just an incredible organization. It creates the space for us to be seen, heard, and celebrated, which we will do tonight. So thank you, Armonk, and thank you to the board members. And I also have to point out Renato Scaff, who's sitting here from Accenture, who's our North America CEO, who gives us the checks so that we can pay for these things. So just be really nice to him when you see him. Say, hi, Renato. But listen, thank you. Turning it over to you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Kelly. So I love that conversation around competition. And if we take that just a step further, right, to be ready to compete, we've got to be investing in ourselves. And that's a little bit of the frame up that I'm going to give you right now. So during the pandemic, Accenture did some research like Accenture does. And we were really thinking about, right, you know, the employer-employee relationship and that dynamic. And we knew that our employees were asking tough questions of all of us, right, no matter where we sat in corporate, right, in the workforce. And so we were asking ourselves, are our needs getting met, right? You know, are we going to be safe as we come back into, right, you know, the work environment? And then what are we going to be doing, you know, with the real social injustice challenges that we're facing the world? And so the research told us that there's a lot of trust in that we were going to do the right things, right? That we were going to have support from our employers, but also that we were going to be rethinking about what we did, right? You know, so it's again, the numbers were there and we're still going through that. And so the model that came out was this model of net better off. It's looking at the different dimensions of the wholeness of ourselves and asking, in light of our employment and the work that we do, how are we doing emotionally and mentally? How are we doing with our relationships, right? Do we feel that we've got that close support? How are we doing physically? Are we investing in ourselves, in our wellness? How are we doing around purpose? Does our work, right, align to what we want to do with our sense beyond ourselves? Are we employable? What are we doing from a skills perspective, right? The ability to earn. How are we doing financially? Nellie just talked about the wealth model. And so if we took a look at, at all of those dimensions, and if we were activating along all of those dimensions, then we were doing better as individuals, and the workplace, the workforce, our work outcomes, right, the business outcomes, we're also going to be seeing an increase, right? When we're well, we can just draw that logically, right? But now we have a way to look at ourselves across these different dimensions of net better off. And so, long term, right, when we are as a workforce doing well, we're going to do well for our business. And so what we wanted to do today with you is have an opportunity to dig into this conversation deeper. And with that, I want to invite Glenda and Carolina to come up here with me so that we can have a conversation. So again, amazing colleagues and friends. Glenda is a global offering lead for an Oracle product that we have at Accenture. Carolina is our fearless leader in our inclusion and diversity relationship management space. And as Omar introduced me, I work in our inclusion, diversity, and equity practice. And so ladies, good morning. How are you?
Great.
Wonderful.
Fantastic.
We want to start digging into this conversation in the framework of Net Better Off. And Carolina, I'm going to start with you because you have been engaging with high tech over several sessions, and you have kind of had the conversation around wellness, right? How are we doing as humans in our wellness? And so I would love for you to share some of the insights that you had as you were conversing with other high tech individuals in sessions.
Great question, and thank you for creating the space for that question because, wellness doesn't just stop at a point in time when we talk about Wellness Month. It's really thinking about our conversation, those who joined us back in July, which is looking at it through the lens of supporting mental health and wellness, the two together. They can't be separate. Dr. Tam, if you tuned in or joined us physically in the session, you would have heard, this stat that really struck a chord with me, which was the stat around 9 out of 10 people have experienced a mental health challenge. And so it touches everyone and everywhere. And so as part of that, there were some tactical things that I think organizations and people, we need to take a look at our role in helping to demystify or remove the stigma and the bias related to mental health and challenges. It's also looking at it through the lens of how do we lead with cultural humility, right? And creating that space for care and compassion, as well as how do we look to stand up resources and tools that are focused on addressing the needs of individuals versus standing up tools that organizations just want to put out there. So putting people first is part of that conversation, and something that I think equally important as we have this conversation about productivity and engagement. You can't be at your best if you're not in the best in all these areas of focus that we'll talk about as far as this framework.
That's awesome, because it really ties into, again, a career growth strategy, right? Is that on both sides of the equation that we are not afraid to address those dimensions of wellness, mental health, right, physical wellness, as a way of saying, are we ready to keep competing for the progression that we want in our careers? I love that. Glenda, I'm going to ask you a question. You're a leader in a global organization. You've had your own achieved milestones and promotions. As you think about the dimensions of Net Better Off, right? What do you think are key actions that have accelerated your career growth?
Well, I have to say, early in my career, I really focused on some of the things that Nelly was talking about, and really, focus on the competitive aspect, right? Just go for it. I felt that I had to work sometimes 3 times harder than the next person because I'm a Latina woman. And so for many years, I was, Jasenia and I, you and I were talking about this on our way here from the airport. I was conditioned to always work super hard because it's what I had to do to advance. And I had to do it 3, sometimes 4 times harder than the next person, right? So I think that's what propelled my career because I was working so hard. But I think that I've gotten to a point now that there's 2 areas, 2 dimensions of the Net Better Off that I'm focusing. Now that I feel I've accomplished success, I've been able to grow. I owe it to other people to, just think about how I can mentor others. So the 2 areas that I would think of is be purposeful, right? And mental. So those 2 areas are areas that I've been focusing now even more. There's the only way that you can build great teams, that people can be intentional, is that you can provide that coaching and that mentoring, right? So now I'm very intentional about really focusing on our people, building amazing teams. Telling my story, right? Being proud of who I am. For many, many years, I kind of suppressed being this Puerto Rican woman, right? And suppress even, as when I worked, when I, attended meetings, when I spoke to clients, I was trying to be a different individual. I was trying, even in my mannerisms, not use my hands and be something that, someone that everybody else wanted me to be. And I want to share that. I want to, that's really my new purpose. When it comes to the mental aspect, is actually something that I started thinking more about recently. And not too long ago, I wasn't feeling too great. I would say the month of October was a tough month. I had a lot going on. Obviously sometimes we're working in multiple projects for multiple clients. We have multiple deals that we're working through, and it could be very tiring. It could be challenging, and I was feeling really, really down. And Carolina actually invited me to join a Great Place to Work event we had in Orlando, and our CEO was speaking about mental health, and the professional Olympian Michael Phelps joined the conversation, and 8-time gold medalist, right? And he was talking about mental health, and one of the things that he mentioned is that sports people, professional sports people usually have a very regimented routine, but then they also incorporate recovery. And he could never understand why professionals in the business world would not incorporate that recovery. And I started thinking about that, and I'm like, wait a second, that's me. All I'm doing is working. I'm suppressing my emotions, my, exhaustion at times, and I'm getting no recovery. And that really sat with me in terms of the things that I need to do. So this is actually, guys, very recent, right? We learn every day. And these are things that I want to share with other people. And as I learn, just, I would marry both the purposeful aspect and the mental to not only help myself, but also set the example and help other people that might be going through some challenging times.
That's wonderful. Carolina, I'm going to come to you because you hear a lot of our people's stories, right? And so as Glenda's sharing maybe what she's activated to help her accelerate her career, what are you hearing from those that are positioning themselves well, for career advancement? What are you hearing from them about what they're doing to be ready, to be competing, to be advancing?
So I was originally going to say that I call them the Power 3 C's, as I was telling Glenda right before we started, but now hearing Nellie's compete, I got to add that in. So I won't talk about compete because you heard enough about that. But it's like, understanding your values. So create your brand, your value, understanding what that is. The other piece is around understanding your connections, the importance of when we think about mentorship. You got to have many mentors, but you have to have a few sponsors. And when I say few is because those sponsors that are going to be in the room or really have that influence in your career decisions and navigations. So I've seen the success of people's stories is when they have the right sponsor, not because they're in part of this, they're the top of the top, but truly individuals at the table who are going to speak and tell your story has been really key to the successes and the strategies I've seen navigate across all people. I think equally important as we think about Latinos, we're all injected with that need to want to connect. And so making sure that you have that network of individuals that go broader than just mentors and sponsors, where they become sounding boards, where they agitate you. I get agitated quite a bit sometimes with the person in this room, but those people that can disrupt you and really get you thinking and stepping outside of the box and having sometimes uncomfortable conversations or even unpopular conversations, because that's where true growth really stems from, not in this status quo, but looking at, as you heard Nellie talk about, this need to get uncomfortable, to reach out and move into that comfort of that discomfort zone.
That's right. Glenda, I'm going to come back to you. We're going to move to employable, right? One of the exciting pieces for tomorrow as a teaser is that Omar and Nellie are going to be talking about an Accenture point of view on skills and capabilities. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about employable. As you lead a practice, of I think it's over 300 people now. I want you to tell me about how are you talking about skills and capabilities, as you think about practice, not only in what we need to do today, but as you look to the future of the business.
In the technology world, I could sit here and talk about, particular technology, the different platform ecosystems that we have. And I think the one thing that will make people more employable when we look at tech is really to raise your hand and say, I want to learn, right? That is the most important skill. I always tell people you need to be your own billboard. When you're driving down I live in Florida, so when you're driving up and down the turnpike and you see those big billboards, you are one of them. And you have to raise your hand and say, I want to learn that. I want to do that. Anybody can do it. In fact, we have an apprentice program at Accenture where we hire individuals that they either have junior college or a high school degree, not necessarily college, and they come in. And actually, I gravitate around those resources because they're flexible, they're willing to learn, and they can learn any technology. We've had folks that have learned Analytics Cloud. We have resources that have learned ERP. We have people with a background on insurance or science. And we just, I maybe actually right now have a healthcare customer, and someone with, science experience could be helpful. So it's really all about really saying, I want to learn this, reaching out to people, making those connections, and sometimes even be willing to shadow. You don't need to be in a particular position. You can just shadow someone else that is doing something, and you can get those skills and you can learn and you can claim those yours. One of the things that I notice a lot of people do, and I think I've done it, so I'm sure a lot of Latinos out there are doing it, is when we know something, we don't showcase it. We don't highlight it, right? Even if I learn something for a week, you know what? I'm going to claim it. That's a skill that I have. That is something new that I learned that I didn't know before. So I think it's very important in tech to really make those connections. Tell people, I want to do that. I want visibility to that. Can you show me? Right? If you don't ask, what is the worst that can happen? That someone says no, then you go to the next person. And that's how you learn. And just really quickly, I wanted to tell you an anecdote. 2003, my daughter was a year old. And I was working for this company, and I really wanted to thrive and grow in tech. And I noticed, I was one of the very few Latinas in an IT organization. And I went out, I did my research. I remember putting a whole PowerPoint together at the time of the trainings that I demanded the company to give me. I literally calculated the budget, how much it was gonna take, where I was gonna go, everything. And I said, what's the worst thing that they're gonna tell me no? So out of the 5 things that I asked, I think I got 3 of them. And that is how you become employable. That is how you really need to be accountable. And you need to be an advocate for yourself. Nobody's going to wake up every morning thinking, oh my gosh, I got to help Carolina do her goals, right? Yes. You need to do that. I mean, some people like me would do it, but it's up to you, right, to take charge and seek what you need.
Yeah, and as part of that, I think it's the comfortableness of being asking for help. And
Yep.
as you rise, oftentimes we feel like we've got to know, and we should know the answer. And that's where the biggest enemy of learning is, when you self-impose that on yourself.
Right, when we're our first no, right? Like
That's
in our
right.
head, often when we ask, when we're thinking about, how might I or what should I, we are the first negative filter that we encounter. And so how do we lift that, right? And just speak the words, right? What's the worst that can happen if we were already going to lean into our, to being our first no? What anyone else has to say might be gravy, right? It's kind of bonus. Carolina, you've celebrated a wonderful career. May I share that you've celebrated 25 years at Accenture?
I started when I was 10.
We all did, right? We're all kid wonders. But I want to ask you, as you, one, what I find inspirational about your career journey is that it's one where you have risen in your own career, but you have had, again, that, that global view, right, to how our people are doing, how we're shaping careers, how we're thinking about organizationally, skills and growth and promotion. And so if you were to say, kind of what were the 2 or 3 things that you wish people would stop doing so that they could accelerate their career even more, what would it be?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the nose by saying the no. Stop saying no first to yourself. I think some of the barriers are the limiting beliefs that we allow ourselves not to take that next role or that opportunity to grow starts with self. So really checking in and honoring your experience. Nellie talked about, deserving a promotion and the earned a promotion. There's a distinction there. I mean, You are where you are because you've earned it. No one gave it to you because you deserve something. You did it because of the achievement of that you showcased and showed for as part of your contribution. So that's the first one. I think it's the opposite of the way that I would answer it, which goes back to the connection. Early on in my career, I've been 25 years at Accenture, started in management consulting, but 22 have been solely as an I&D practitioner and a thought leader, globally, nationally, regionally, you name it, I've done it. And part of that journey has been the real sense of understanding the power of community. You know, we now hear a lot of sense of belonging and inclusion. I know that those becomes buzzwords and kind of gloss over your head, but truly it is that. As Latinos, we have this innate need to connect. And so creating communities where people don't self-edit. My first project, I self-edited with my name. I went by Carolina because I didn't feel comfortable speaking because I didn't see myself in any of the people there. And that was self-imposed. It wasn't somebody who was telling me. So community is important, as well as confidence. That despite the fact that I do not see someone like me, I know that I'm confident in my skills and my abilities to get there. And that goes back to connections and need to be able to have those network of mentors, sponsors, and network of friends that can hold you, embrace you, encourage you when those things, we think about our journeys of ebb and flows, because if your career journey does not look like a heartbeat, you're not really living. So take those setbacks as opportunities for comebacks to showcase who and what you are.
That's wonderful. I want to give us time to dive into the activities. So I am gonna cut our conversation short, even though I could talk to you all day long. But I want to orient you to some a fold out that's on your seat, because that's what we're going to go to next. I want to appreciate you, Carolina and Glenda, for sharing a little bit about the way that you think about the wholeness of a career experience and the wholeness of a person. And Carolina, I'm going to invite you to talk to us about what the next activity is going to be.
Excellent, thank you. So at your chairs and those in the screen there, you will see a slide or this handout that we have. And if you flip through it, you'll see that there are a couple of questions related to the framework that Yesenia walked through us at the beginning. What I'm going to invite you to do, I know that we're kind of tight on time, but I want you to take maybe just a couple of minutes just to glance through some of the questions related to each of these areas as we think about that growth. How do we accelerate growth for ourselves, for our community, and then for our own careers? So looking at through those lenses. So I'm going to pause and maybe give 3 minutes. I'm looking at the time here. And then maybe just get one or two volunteers to share some of their perspective, either what they heard from us or what you reflected on this activity. And this doesn't stop today. Take it home. Use this as a way to facilitate a conversation and checking with self as you think about your next and your plans toward those goals.
And I'm going to invite our virtual audience. You have some breakout rooms. We've got some facilitators that are waiting for you, that you can be in a small group discussion as well. So if you want to dial into that breakout room, please go ahead and do that, and then we'll reconvene here before we close out. We are at our time together, and so I just want to end with gratitude. One, for you being here, right? It takes an effort to travel these days, so thank you for being here. To High Tech, to Omar, to Vivian, everyone who's put this together. We are incredibly grateful for the service. This is an act of service to one another. And so to the High Tech community, thank you. To the production team, right, that's helping us get organized and be heard and be seen in all sorts of ways, an incredible thank you to everyone behind the scenes that makes this happen. To my Accenture colleagues, to Carolina, to Glenda, to Nelly, and the others, Renato, who support our ability to be here. It's an incredible gift, again, an act of service for me. Virtually, our attendees, we have 3 Accenture leaders in the breakout, Angela Cruz. Angela's with us today, Wendy Ehlers and Sandra Chavez. Thank you for their facilitation in helping engage the virtual audience. And again, right, we come together based on the work of a lot of people. And so back home, our Accenture research team, our marketing and communications team, who helps put all of this together. We don't want to leave without acknowledging them. We also have, again, that great teaser. Tomorrow there's going to be a great conversation around an Accenture point of view on the workforce, on skilling, on capability building. And so we want to make sure that we don't leave this without planting the seeds, right, for how do we move from where we are today, kind of what we can recognize for ourselves, right, as an exercise of reflection, and that we're always moving towards something, right? What is that meaningful next step that we will take to grow and accelerate our careers? What is the meaningful next step that we will take to surround our family with the resources that they need, to surround our communities with the resources they need, right? Because together we are all creating this incredible momentum, that force that Nellie talked about as she, in her opening remarks, right? Is how do we galvanize that for good? And how do we meet here next year having been, successful in the individual aspirations and the corporate aspirations and the community aspirations that we're sharing here together. So once more, thank you for the time here. To my amazing colleagues, to High Tech and others, have an incredible rest of the conference.
Thank you.